Start this hour with what Donald Trump is trying to sell the American people this second term. The president has brought up the hardship that Americans will face multiple times now as the chaotic rollout of his tariffs have proven both damaging to the American economy and wildly unpopular among the American people. Like his recent remark that American children might have 2 dolls instead of 30 this Christmas. Now, he's perhaps using dolls as an example here because it sounds frivolous and unimportant in the grand scheme of things. But make no mistake, what the president is trying to sell here has nothing to do with dolls and everything to do with the concept of austerity. And that is not what he campaigned on. For ordinary American families who work hard for every penny, reducing financial hardship to a question of dolls is deeply offensive. It's a dismissal of the daily struggle to make ends meet in a country where the cost of living keeps outpacing wages. His sweeping tariffs could cost the average household $3,800 a year, hitting working and middle-class Americans the hardest, according to a report from Yale. When Trump talks about dolls, what he's really saying is get ready for hard times. Prepare for scarcity. Prepare for prices to spike. You probably won't be able to afford the life that you currently live. And why? For what? To bankroll his tariff and tax cuts for the rich is why. Trump, a man who surrounds himself with gold-plated everything, is trivializing what amounts to a demand for real sacrifice from working and middle-class Americans. Make no mistake, this is not about dolls or pencils or strollers. It's about deliberately making life harder for millions of families under the false pretense that doing so is necessary for some greater good. But there is no greater good unless you're pretty rich. And even then, it's not clear that tanking the global economy is beneficial because Donald Trump's tariffs don't just take a wrecking ball to Main Street America. They put the U.S. dollar's global dominance at serious risk of collapse. That's according to the Harvard economist Ken Rogoff, who told Axios, quote, Trump is a catalyst and an accelerant. The rest of the world was already seeking more freedom from the dollar, and this just lit a fire under it, end quote. America does not need austerity right now for any reason. We certainly don't need austerity so that the ultra-wealthy can score another $5 trillion in tax cuts. We don't need austerity so Trump can pass a cruel budget that guts Medicaid and dismantles the social safety net, all to fund $5 trillion in tax cuts. Remember, after 9/11, President George W. Bush told Americans that the most patriotic thing they could do was spend to keep the economy moving. That was a Republican president encouraging consumer confidence and spending, not austerity. And that was a moment of real national crisis because George Bush understood what every president except this president does, that in America, consumer spending drives economic recovery. But now we got a Republican president who himself caused the instability from which we would actually need to recover. And he's asking ordinary, non-rich working Americans to tighten their belts to fix it. Let's be clear. Austerity is a real thing that has historically, in some very specific instances, been used successfully. But it's certainly not a growth strategy, which is what Donald Trump actually campaigned on. Austerity is the policy of pulling back 2 dolls instead of 30, 5 pencils instead of 250, though I've never known anyone who wasn't an architect who had 250 pencils. And like tariffs, austerity only makes sense in certain specific circumstances. For instance, during a true emergency like a war or a natural disaster. Austerity asks people to sacrifice for the greater good. But what is the greater good here? To what true national emergency are we responding other than the one that Donald Trump is manufacturing through sweeping tariffs that raise prices on everything from groceries to school supplies? This is, in fact, austerity without justification, austerity with no purpose. It's austerity by design to make sure that the wealthy remain untouched while the rest of the country is told to make do. Because let's be honest, Trump never intended for the wealthy to share in this so-called sacrifice. When Trump says your kids only need 2 dolls, he's not saying his grandkids will get 2 gifts this holiday season. He's not telling billionaire CEOs they should give up their private jets and fly commercial or sell their yachts and board a Carnival cruise. He's telling you, the teacher, the truck driver, the retiree, the single mom, the small business owner, he's telling you your life needs to get economically smaller so his billionaire buddies' tax bills can get smaller. And while he's at it, his foot soldiers in Congress are busy pushing cuts to Medicaid, the very lifeline that families depend on when times get tough. So he manufactures this crisis, he imposes austerity, and then he takes away the very tools that Americans need to survive it. This is a betrayal of trust, not just of his base, but of all hardworking Americans, and a full-blown assault on America's working and middle class. You know, the 99% who don't have Mar-a-Lago and Trump Towers to fall back on. This is not economic policy. It's a wealth protection racket dressed up as fiscal responsibility. Even the conservative Wall Street Journal sees right through it, writing, quote, "In Mr. Trump's America, you get $2 only. You pay more, and you be sure to thank the man in the handmade silk tie on the way out. Presidents succeed by promising a chicken in every pot and then delivering 2 or 3. Up until last week, I would have said that was Mr. Trump's shtick. Now I'm not so sure. Mr. Trump has no standing to push austerity. His whole life has been a tribute to gilded, gaudy excess. Every room he enters is bedazzled and bedecked. He puts his name on anything he thinks he can sell: sneakers, watches, steaks, golf balls. Nobody needs any of it. Most of us make budgeting decisions for our businesses and families that have real-world consequences. We can decide what we need and don't need. Thank you very much." End quote. That was the Wall Street Journal. Trump ran in 2016 promising to strengthen the economy, to uplift the forgotten man and women. But here we are in 2025, and he's telling these same people to accept less, spend less, expect less, while pretending it's good for their own good. As our good friend Molly Jong Fast wondered, so capitalism is bad now? This is not a natural downturn in the economy. This is not a war economy. This is not the result of some external disaster. It's the fallout from one man's economic choices and his refusal to course correct. Austerity is for emergencies. This is economic gaslighting. So no, Donald Trump, we're not buying the idea that Americans need to give up the things that keep daily life running just because you lit the house on fire and now want credit for handing us a water bucket. Joining me now is the former Democratic Congresswoman Katie Porter of California. She's now a law professor at the University of California, Irvine. She's a 2026 candidate for the governor of California. Katie, good to see you again. Thank you and welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
I want your take on this, because this is nonsensical. Donald Trump is he does it in a very frivolous way. He talks about strollers and dolls and pretty girls who have them and things that mothers buy them. It's a weirdly gendered, unimportant stuff that doesn't matter. The real economy will be fine. You just buy fewer pencils and strollers and dolls, and the world will work out okay. It's a lot of BS.
It absolutely is. This is not a man who's going to be pushing a shopping cart with 3 kids in tow through a Target or a Walmart in August when his tariffs are in full effect, trying to explain to his kids why they can't get all the items on the school shopping list, trying to take a hard look at whether they can shove their kids' feet back in the same old sneakers or make that worn out backpack do one more year. It's condescending, and it's frankly offensive. And it's particularly offensive to moms, because we're the ones, when times get tough, women are the ones who are expected to make ends meet, to just make do. And so for him to talk in this way to the American people is so dismissive of working people and of what it's really like to be an American while he sits, and as you said, a gold gilded office.
Yeah, and I don't really get how this is an appeal to Republicans or conservatives. I'm sure they've got the same problems. There are Republicans and conservatives who are single mothers of 3 children like you are, or hardworking people who don't have a lot of extra money at the end of the day, already suffering because of these tariffs, already suffering because their goods are sitting unexported or can't bring things in. There's nobody who thinks this is a good idea. There are very few times in this country's history where austerity has been called for and has been thought of as a shared experience.
No, that's right. He's not justifying it because we're having an actual national emergency. He's manufacturing one. And I think one of the reasons that we haven't seen the depth of outrage, we are just at the beginning of these tariffs hitting home in people's shopping carts. Businesses order goods far in advance, 6 months, a year in advance. They contract for and pay for things. The real pain is coming in the next couple months. It's going to come at back to school time. And by Christmas, by the holidays, it's going to be really, really tough for American families. And you know who it's not going to be tough for? Donald Trump. And that's really the problem here. This is somebody who claims to be interested in the American people, in working people. And Democrats, are being told that we don't do enough for the working people. Honestly, Trump could not be saying more clearly to American people, to small businesses, to our entire economy, to everyone who depends on their job to make ends meet, who has to walk into the grocery store worried about the balance on their credit card or their bank account. He's basically saying to them, I don't care. And I don't see you, and I don't understand just how hard this is to do because I've never done it. And so the only experience Donald Trump has with financial problems is creating them.
So you say it hasn't been felt yet, and that's true. In most cases, we've seen some announcements of some layoffs. But over where you are in California, you've got the Port of Long Beach and Los Angeles. We've got the Port of Newark here in Elizabeth. Long Beach and Los Angeles is where everything from China, or most things from China, come in. Ships were turned around. There were ships that hadn't left, that never left China. The ships that were turned around. The drop in supply in input into that port has been pretty dramatic. I've seen numbers of 35 or 40% compared to last year. That's dock workers, that's longshoremen, that's truckers, that's warehousers, that's the employees of the stores that those products go to. It will be felt. This is not just about $2. This is about somebody's job.
No, it's about our entire economy, right? It's about every aspect of our economy, because even things that are made in America, of course, have some component parts that come in from other countries. And so it is actually already being felt very painfully by our small businesses, by our ports. People are having trouble getting supplies. They're having to reconstitute their budget. They're having to say, no, I'm not going to put that on the shelves. No, I'm not going to be able to stock 3 or 4 of those. I'm only going to stock 1 case of those items. And it is already happening in our supply chain, and it is coming, I'm sad to say, to a store near you. And the only person whose fault this is Donald Trump. We can't even blame, as fun as it can be, to say this is the fault of Republicans in Congress. This is policy driven and set by Donald Trump, and he is solely going to be responsible for it, and he has to own all that political fallout. And to set himself up for what's coming, to try to tell American families it's going to be about strollers, this Dan doesn't know anything. I'll try to keep it PG for us. Doesn't know anything about a stroller. And so for him to try to tell us that it's just about strollers and dolls, to kind of make this about things that girls or babies need, it's gross. Yeah,
it's very diminishing. And the point is, whatever makes strollers and pencils and dolls more expensive is going to make everything in your life more expensive. Katie Porter, great to see you. Thank you for being with us. Congresswoman Katie Porter, former Congresswoman Katie Porter, is running for governor of California.